Hello, everyone. I am Dave Thompson. I'm the Director of Education here at the Academy of Cleaning Excellence. And today you're listening to our third episode of Talking Clean in a Dirty World. There's a lot of things that go on in our environments each and every day, every month. And this podcast, or, video cast, if you're watching on video, is to, just bring people together and talk about what's going on in the world today. So I'm going to be joined today by several individuals. I'll bring them on and let them introduce themselves. Good morning, Don.
Good morning. Don Tracy here, Gem Supply in Orlando, Florida.
Hey, I'm Bobby Zagers, and Gem Supply lets me hang out and do sales and marketing.
Morning, everybody. I'm Javier Cuarta, building services contractor in Tampa Bay. Modern Cleaning Solutions is our company.
Good morning, gentlemen. As we start this conversation today, I think that for us here in Florida, there has been traumatic instance situation for some of us not so much. But I thought it was interesting as I was thinking about today. Here I am in the middle of the state of Florida, broadcasting to you today from Orlando. But the people on this panel are from, both sides of the state in the coasts. And when Ian came through, it affected all of us in some way as it made its swath through the middle of the state. Gentlemen, how did you make it through?
Well, in Tampa, we didn't have any, where I live in Oldsmar, we didn't have any significant weather. It was, we had plenty of warning to get and move for A and B in the Tampa area. I questioned it even back then, like what were they thinking south? Because they were moving us out of Tampa and Pinellas for A's and B's 3, 4, 5 days when the storm was still under Cuba or right above Cuba. And they weren't doing anything down. It didn't seem like they just had A's going in those other markets, Manatee, Sarasota, and down. And I think that was the mistake, truly. If they're looking at them forensically back, what they should have done is they should know that hurricane can do anything and really should move everybody out. That's an A and a B, or at least give them an opportunity to get out.
Explain an A and a B for those who may not know that.
Well, like flood, like your hurricane zone. It's not necessarily a flood zone, but it's like your hurricane evacuation zone. And I mean, I know people where the hurricane came up pretty much right over their house that weren't told to evacuate right away, but we were told to evacuate 3 days before. And I'm in a B, right? So B is a big deal to get evacuated because usually A is right on the coast and that goes all the time. I'm in the B part of it, and we were way ahead of the curve in Pinellas. And there's people in Charlotte County that didn't really get the idea that they really needed to get the heck out of town until 12 hours before that storm hit. Whether or not, I don't know the timing of when they did give an evacuation to B, but it was definitely not when they gave it to us. And that every time they delay that just delays people paying attention. And if if they think, well, it's not coming here, even though they're saying, oh, there's a warning, but it's saying it's going over here and that's where everybody's reacting. I think that was, looking at it, I'd say that's an issue if people stay behind in those B's and A's because they didn't really know that this was a very serious thing. I mean, the lesson learned there is 12 hours before, they probably know where that storm's going. And if it's coming at you, get the heck out of town. I mean, if you're going to wait that long.
Okay, Don, you're on the other side of the state. So how did it?
Well, we had a little bit of a warning because we watched what happened down south. Up here in Daytona area, we had about probably a 24-hour notice of what it was going to do and where it was going to go. Once it said, they mapped it out to go up through the state. Most of the folks up here know that once it starts going through the state, it loses its power because it doesn't have the water to feed it. So there was a lot of complacency up here because of that. But the folks on the shore Luckily, we're told there's going to be a storm surge with this on our side as well, because it's going out to sea and it's going to push the water back to us. So they did a very good job of motivating people to pay attention to that information and get out of town if you have to, board yourself up and get out. So we didn't have a whole lot of, I think the only loss of life we had was some tourist from Kentucky, I believe it was. I'm not sure. She decided to go out and look at the storm surge and get in the water, never to be seen again. I mean, some people are just adventuresome to the point of stupid.
Hey, Dave, maybe you can show too, like down by our Kissimmee store, it flooded pretty well, made Fox News. It was on local Fox News, and then it was on the national Fox News, and where they had an airboat rescuing people out of the neighborhood. And our store, the store's right in the middle of that. You could probably show that or add that in, Dave. But the people who've lived in Kissimmee all their lives, who are 70 years old, who I know, were telling me that they've never seen flooding like that. And it's all because of their explanation for it. It's all because there's new neighborhoods everywhere. So,
and for those that are watching and listening, folks, what we're talking about in Kissimmee is in the middle of state here, basically a suburb of Orlando. We're not on the coast, so we didn't get the storm surge that you gentlemen are talking about, but yet it just sat there for a long period of time and dumped all kinds of rain, took out power that some people have dealt with for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Javier, you have a particular viewpoint on this subject, I believe.
Well, I thought of the idea of the hurricane preparedness, question for, in general, pretty much for not waiting for the last moment. I thought it was pretty important because what I noticed was, like Bobby was saying, with a lot of people with different zones and different areas that they had to be evacuated and all that stuff. And they were speaking, I remember watching on Bay News 9 that there was a lot of people that the police department was having a lot of trouble. I mean, not forcibly trying to get somebody out of their home for their own well-being, but at the last minute, they didn't want to leave their houses and all this stuff because they felt that they didn't have enough preparation, that they didn't want to leave because they have their animals, because they have other things like that. I think that if you get that in a mass scale of people that are not prepared, not knowing where the storm is going to go, what's going to happen, I mean, that's where your impact and loss of life is from. That's why I think Bobby made a good point a second ago when he said about 12 hours. Usually they should know about 12 hours ahead of time. I mean, timing is everything. And it's not only because of losing your home or your property or whatnot, it's also for other people, for your lives or whatnot. I mean, I had, when this whole thing happened, obviously everything shut down and, nobody was allowing people to come to work and all that stuff. But the good thing about that is that I had 4 of my people that live in Pinellas County. So they were in the flood zone and they had to evacuate. So, had the storm, if they decided the people to continue to work, I mean, there would have been 4 people short there. But of course, nobody would ever, put somebody's life before the safety of anything. But it's just, the preparedness is all around, and it's having to do with how, you take care of your property, your building, what can you do to, just protect everything in general. And I don't think that a lot of people give it that, although we don't get that many hurricanes, Lord willing, we don't as a rule. But it's just, it's almost like you really want to have this boundary to know when you should be prepared and when to actually take it serious. Because yes, it was a bad hurricane. I mean, I don't know if it was in the likes of Katrina, but maybe this close to it or almost the same. But it's really something that a lot of people here in Florida, I think, don't focus on that much until it really is coming up upon you or it's going to happen to you, that sort of thing.
I think the thing here that's interesting about this, gentlemen, as we talk about this here at the start of our show today, is that disaster preparedness is something that people need to really pay attention to. I have right across, I live in a trailer park or resort, as they say. Sorry, folks, got to use the right terminology here.
You got to be more upscale here.
RV park.
The thing is right across the street is a lady that works for FEMA, and she went through 2 years of stress that she couldn't believe. And when this hit, she had what they called removed herself from deployment because she said, I just can't deal with this anymore. I can't deal with this. And she's on the side of trying to help people that have went through the disasters. And I thought it was interesting as last week I taped a podcast with a gentleman, Charles Smith, and he talked about compound PTSD. Now, folks, I thought it was very interesting, and please listen to our podcast there and you'll find out more about it. But the reason I think this is kind of interesting, gentlemen, is there have been many people now that have went through more than one of these events. And as he explained, compound PTSD is all of these things. And he said it was kind of like a 7-layer cake. They just build on top of each other. I'm sure that there are some people feeling that compound PTSD on especially the West Coast. Or even in Tornado Alley, or you see these floods that are happening around the world. There, we have natural catastrophic disasters that are happening much more frequently.
I mean, I agree. I think it's absolutely true. I mean, it's when you think about it, all the events throughout the year. I mean, anybody who could, if you already have an issue with PTSD, let's see as an example, or even if you don't. But, we've had COVID the last 2 years. We've had all these issues going on with that, people scared for their health safety. And then, of course, now being here in Florida, then you're going to have a storm on top of that to compile that. And then on top of your day-to-day stresses and everything else.
And you just went through that, Javier. You're a business owner. You have people that, as you said, had to evacuate. You were going through Ian, and you had COVID to boot.
Yeah, I did. Absolutely. Yeah. And so I did. I guess I got my taste of it,
I can give you guys a little different viewpoint of that, because at my church we're gearing up to be more of a counseling center than we already are, because our pastor is a trained, licensed biblical counselor. And what I'm learning through all this conversation that we're having is that there's so many folks out there that need to have counseling. And I'm not talking about going to a doctor or a psychologist or any of that. And a lot of it is just one-on-one talking with somebody else who maybe has been through the same kind of thing you have. And I think in our society today,
that's what Charles was talking about. You just need somebody, you need an outlet, and you need to recognize it and talk it through. That's all he's saying.
Yeah, and that's what we're finding is there's a tremendous amount of isolation. COVID, there was already isolation because of the social aspects of social media and people being, staying in their basement, kind of, to put a basic analogy to it. But along with that, it's also compound that with COVID. Now we're making them stay there. They can't go out. And then we had 2 years of that. It fed into that psychosis of I'm isolated. And then people get to a point where they don't know how to reach out. It just you're talking about compounding it becomes a very compound process where, as an old guy, I always said, suck it up, buttercup, go deal with your deal, right? But I'm learning that there's a lot of folks out there that really do have this trauma from all different things in life. I mean, their family traumas, pick your poison. But then you compound that with COVID, or you compound that with any stresses, job stresses, all that. And you start to get a complex problem that can't be solved by just sitting there and trying to figure it out, or taking a pill, or going online trying to find some diagnosis. You got to talk to somebody. And sometimes
I know two nurses that have been traveling nurses, because that's what happens in these RV resorts. We have a lot of traveling nurses, and they've just plain quit. They can't deal with it anymore.
They can't deal with the stress.
Mm-hmm.
As I think about this, Javier, I want to come back to you. Has your service now had a lot of issues with cleaning up after all of this? I mean, we need to get back to business as usual, if you will.
Well, we've been very fortunate as far as, cleaning up with the aspect of dealing with customers and stuff, and with people that, we haven't been able to do the job because of the closures during the hurricane period and all that stuff. That's been acceptable, understandable. We were very fortunate that as far as physical damages or anything like that, David, we didn't really come across anybody who really was really harmed by the storm or during the storm period, as far as their buildings or damages and stuff like that. So I haven't gotten I haven't been informed of any of that yet since it happened at all, and it's been business as usual for us ever since this subsided. But I'm sure in other areas. I think with us, our biggest deal was, since basically everything was shut down for the week, it's catching up now. Because now that everything, of course, everything is blown over and everything's back to normal. It's going back and being able to provide those services that they needed that really didn't have it for that period of time. So it's kind of a catch up game.
Hey, Bobby, as he's talking about this and I'm thinking about business as usual, I noticed that there was a lot of different types of equipment that was going out. Now some of that's got to be restocked, and that's got to be an issue on the supply chain getting ready for what's next.
Yeah, I don't, in the 30 years of doing this and the amount of hurricanes we've had come through, I mean, I don't think hurricanes are good for business in the state of Florida, necessarily for janitorial supply houses. I mean, yes, we do sell some blowers and you sell some wet vacs and all that kind of stuff. And we've even sometimes sold generators in the past. But at the end of the day, our business was shut down for 7 days from most of our primary market. We lost pretty much the end of the September as a group. So, I mean, it's one of those things where people from out of state will go, oh, there's a hurricane. Well, it's not like it was with COVID where it blew up and then you have a bunch of business. It's just, yeah, we take care of some issues and we do end up selling some things to the people that are to help them take care of their facilities or the damage they might have. But overall, it's not great for the economy necessarily at the time it's happening. Because that week of being shut down is a pretty big deal if you think about it. It's 5 work days out of that month.
It's a very small percentage of our customer base that is benefited by it.
Yeah.
Well, I noticed that there's a lot more inventory. And as I was thinking about this, I know, folks, we're not in Christmas yet, but the Christmas season, the holiday season, customers are going to be doing floors and stuff through that time. Is that going to be an issue? Are you preparing for that in any way?
Are you talking about a gem?
Yeah.
Overall? Yeah. No, I mean, we've kind of prepped for that over the last couple of years because with our partnerships with manufacturers, we knew what was happening in like the floor finish industry, or what's going to happen in the chemical or the paper industry or the liner industry, and what the lead times are turning into. And our team's done a great job of figuring that out, getting the right items in stock, getting sometimes more than we'd ever seen before so that we get ahead of it. And I don't see that as an issue at all with us. Now, if you're not prepped, you're not prepared for that, and all of a sudden you go to order from a manufacturer that used to give you a 3 to 5 day lead time and it's now 6 to 12 weeks or whatever number they throw out nowadays, yeah, that's going to hurt somebody. But we've been pretty ahead of that it's really been going on for the last year and a half, truly.
Now, I don't think anybody on this panel went to ISSA unless I missed anything. I know it just happened last week. It used to be you go there to buy at a better price than you could ever get. We didn't go this year. We didn't buy at that special price. Is that really an issue these days?
No, I don't think it's been about that for 20 years though, Dave.
Yeah, that went away a long time ago.
Because, you get any deal that they're giving, they email you the deal from the vendors, if they even do any deals. So I don't.
Are there deals to be made at this time of the year? I mean, some people are just now. I know that some municipalities, their budgets are changing.
I don't know if it's about that, Dave. It's more like right now what's going on is tremendous, or has gone on probably for the last 9 to 12 months, is tremendous amount of price increases and price increases by manufacturers that don't necessarily follow the market. So, and that's what's going to really be interesting to see in the future, how that bites everybody, because some of these manufacturers, maybe their sales are down overall as a group, So they're taking advantage of this time to raise pricing way above and beyond inflationary costs, gas costs, whatever it might be, not lowering them when those costs will change. It'll be interesting to see how the payback comes for them through the end user, through distribution, all the way back to them in the future. Some of them are operating in a position of power where they feel like you can't maneuver around them. But sooner or later, they're going to be there. That's not going to be true by the end user. They're going to be able to make the changes they want with other vendors, and I think people are going to have a long memory on that when they have manufacturers arbitrarily breaking contracts, raising prices 20-25% multiple times. People are going to remember that stuff, and especially when you have other vendors who have the exact same pressures and have done a little different way. They've handled their business a little bit more professionally, a little bit more less where they panicky, and maybe that's because they're either run a more successful business, they're tighter, they're leaner. There could be a lot of different factors, but I know we're gonna remember it. So and I'm sure end users will remember it.
Okay, so speaking of end users, we've got an end user right here. So as you hear this, you're going, holy cow, what am I in for? They're hitting you up already for wanting better price.
Oh, you better believe it, and it's absolutely right. It's going nowhere but up. But I think it's a lot of what's going on though. It's in the preparation of a lot of it, whether it's avoidable or not. What we can purchase or what we can buy, since obviously we're talking about the supply chain issues and price increases. It's being able to prepare people or to get people going from the understanding that, hey, costs are going up. I'm not happy about it, and we're not happy about it. Nobody is. But so they're not in for this shock, and that's what we've been doing. I mean, we've had to, with our clients, to a certain aspect, we've had to raise our rates. Nothing earth shattering, and of course, with a lot of incentive for them and other things, but we let them know ahead of time and give them a lot of knowledge of knowing why things are going up and what these issues are. I mean, a lot of these people are smart. They can figure it out for themselves. It's not a problem. But, we just want to know, it's like, hey, you're giving me this invoice today. It's 25% higher, like Bobby said, or whatever, 30% higher than it was last time. Well, the thing is that as long as it's fair and it's broken down, it's telling you why we're upcharging you is because of, the reason we have a lot of things to pay as well. So, to run a business. So it's that. I think communication is, like I always say, communication is the biggest thing. That's what's not affecting it, because it's a big difference when you prepare somebody or let somebody know several months in advance that prices are going to go up because of uncontrollable circumstances. It's not a question of something that we can control. They can prepare themselves and they can deal from it, instead of having the sticker shock and saying, oh, whatever, here we go, this thing, you're giving me this just giant bill now versus what I'm used to paying. So. Yeah,
it's funny you say that, Javier, because we've had several vendors who do communicate well, who do tell us what's going on, give us plenty of time so we can notify our end user. And then we've had other vendors who just send that little email out to a generic email box, never communicating with the actual people that they dealt with originally, and thinking that is how they're going to raise the price. It'd be like if you just send it to AP at the whoever customer or whatever, and not the actual person that hired you know what was going on. And that's where we've had some real dragouts, because it's just it's kind of a joke. It's kind of weak on that, but is what I look at it as. Because if you communicate it well and you'd have it from a position of strength, like you're saying, and it is legitimate, then we can pass it on along also too and communicate upwards. But when it happens bang bang in 24 hours and with no communication, that's been the issue.
Yeah,
I would be curious.
You were keeping quiet. I just knew you couldn't stay quiet very long.
Well, I was pondering, as I like to do. I'm curious, Javier, because I've been doing this a while, and Bobby's done it longer than I have. And we've seen cycles in this industry, never seen anything like this before, because the stupidity on the world stage is just never been there. So there's a different dynamic going on, but I'm curious about where is the break point for the contracting side of things. When you go in and you present to an office building or whatever, you can clean their building for XYZ. Where do you think the break point is where they go, well, we can do that in-house cheaper? Because in the past, it's been a cycle where folks would go in-house and then they decide, well, this contractor's costing me too much. We can hire a few people and do our own. It goes back and forth. It cycles back and forth between contracting to in-house. Do you think that's going to be a cycle that continues in this environment, or do you guys have the leg up, I would say, because you have people? The biggest issue they're going to have is hiring somebody. They can't find anybody who wants to work, period.
Exactly.
Somebody's going to clean.
Right. I think, Don, that we're always going to have the upper hand. And as a matter of fact, it's funny you mentioned that because I'm going through that right now. I have a condo building in South Tampa that we've had them for 2 years as a good client of ours. And they're considering doing in-house cleaning right now. Now, of course, we're trying to tell them, trying to convince them why they should, of course, stay with us and not do in-house cleaning. But, that's going to be a choice up on their own. But I think the situation is that I don't think it's going to be a drastic change as far as having building services contractors with a lot of these buildings and going with in-house cleaning. And the reason I believe that is that although a lot of these buildings, I've come across my experience so far with dealing with these big companies, these property management companies that have these buildings, a lot of the liability they don't want. I mean, yeah, they can save money by just paying a person, let's say whatever their base hourly rate or whatever, but they don't have to worry about training anybody. They don't have to worry about insurance costs, workman's comp, things like that. And then a lot of these people that are going to be on a full-time position in these big buildings, they're employees that are 40-hour-a-week employees that they're going to require all kinds of different, health insurance benefits, 401k, you name it, everything that goes down the line. So I think that at the end of the day, most of them, a lot of them, I should say, that really compare apples for apples, it still comes out a better deal doing business with business services, building services contractors instead of doing it in-house, because in-house usually, in my opinion, is normally good for like huge corporations like hotels, like a Hilton or Marriott or whatever, because of course in that situation it wouldn't be feasible to do that. I mean, these are hundreds of hotels all over the country, and they're huge, and they usually have a 24-hour staff anyway. So, in that, but as far as dealing with price point issues, in versus hourly employees versus hiring a building services contractor, we haven't come across too much of that problem. It's been steady, I think, but that problem's always existed. It's always going to be when they do their bottom line and then they say, well, we're going to maybe try in-house for a while. Most of the time when they end up trying in-house for a while, they end up going back to somebody else. It's just,
because they have to manage it. And then it means they got to pay a fairly high-priced manager to run those folks and coordinate and schedule and all that. The only advantage they have sometimes is that if they have an in-house person, they can do more things than just clean. They can go move furniture, do
more maintenance aspects, right?
Yeah, more maintenance of a building. And so it becomes a exponential issue depending on how big the building is and properties, et cetera. So, but I'm just curious because I think that cycle, you're on the good side of things right now, I think, because in the cycle we're in, I don't see it going away for a couple of years. People are not able to go in-house because they can't even hire people I was at a restaurant the other night and was just about ready to shut down because the cook was serving the food. He had no helpers. It was ridiculous.
Don, the thing is automation, I know that we've got automatic scrubbers, but that still requires the labor that Javier was talking about. You're talking about automated equipment, but most generally, is this automated equipment for the in-house, or are building service contractors migrating towards that too?
Well, it's funny you said that, Dave, because when we had put this on the agenda a while back, and I had a different viewpoint of it at that time. But since then, I've been thinking about what is automation. I did some research on it this week, and I looked up automation in our industry and automation in general, and all of it always goes back to robotics. How many robots can you put in place? But the problem with automation in our industry is you still have to have somebody there to turn it on, chase it down, fix it when it doesn't work. And it doesn't get into the nitty-gritty cleaning of what we do on a general basis. So you can automate large facilities. I just saw something that was an automated UV light system for schools or hospitals, which is really cool, kind of because, like a surgical center, they could turn this thing on, set it in the surgical center, and let it run around the place and sanitize it. That's cool because right now they're putting these lights in, and the person has to come in an hour later and move the light to a different place, and on and on and on. So that type of automation, I think, works. But I don't know that automation is ever going to be extremely effective in our industry. But automation doesn't mean just machines. I looked this up too. Here's the dictionary definition: the technique of making an apparatus, a process, or a system operate automatically. So I think automation actually pertains to people as well. Automation is when you are the manager of folks and you say, I need you to go clean room A. And the automation part of it is they already know what that means when you say that. You don't need to go and handhold them and detail the parts out. So the automation means, in a personal sense, in a physical human being scenario, the automation is you get folks to do what you want them to do, when you want them to do it, the way you want them to do it. Now that is
I think that last point. That last point was really important there, though, because here at the Academy, that's one of the struggles that I always am like, and it's like, why can't we get restrooms, which is only 5% of the building, to be right? We've got all of these tools, we've got all this stuff. And the problem is every person is doing it a different way. So automation, what you're saying, is making sure that we have a detailed process and everybody follows that process, not making a robot go do it.
Right. It just cookie cutter processes.
I got to tell you, I would ask you to look at it a little bit differently than that, because Dave, you're assuming they're all doing it wrong. I'm going to assume that they're all doing it correctly. But if I'm automating it, then I'm getting that person to be able to do more things. So if it's not, oh, hey, why are we getting that wrong? We're getting that wrong maybe because we don't have enough time. So if I've automated something, where if I've put a robotic auto scrubber out there, even though I got to turn it on and clean it, it still only takes me 10% or 20% of my time that used to take 100% of my time. So now I'm automated that. Everything I automate or everything that I mechanize increases my productivity. And that's really what we're selling here or talking about or asking for the employee to do is to increase their productivity so they can do it based on the instructions.
Right.
Well, I think what was interesting
that comes from the lack of time.
One of the podcasts I was doing, we were in a discussion, and this was, we're doing a series of podcasts with the Center for Education Safety, and it revolves around indoor air quality. And we were talking about custodians and what they do, and we got to restrooms, and we had a discussion, if you will, over what color microfiber that everybody uses in a restroom. And, I got to thinking about this thing, and it was like red only. I don't care what it is that you're doing in the restroom. If you go in the restroom, it's red. I don't want to see a red microfiber used on the water fountain outside the restroom. We can't even automate that because we can't all get on the same page from my viewpoint.
No, I mean, that's a very wide scope of saying everybody's doing that. I don't work in those scopes. I'm thinking some people are doing that. So what we're trying to do is get with the people that are doing that, who understand that, but are trying to get better at their job. They're not trying to, once they figure out the proper way of doing it, now they got to figure out the fastest way to get it done properly. Yeah. And that's where automation and mechanization comes into play. And that's what we do to help. So if you're looking at that, you can say, if we had a podcast back in the 1950s, would they have said, I could never see anybody ever running an auto scrubber if they knew what an auto scrubber was back then? They were, would it be beyond what we think? And it might have been. And it's nothing. It's just because we just can't. That's where we're in. We're in this time period. But as things move so quickly, I mean, we are our job is to help them get this done faster at the highest level they can get it done with. Yeah, it comes from talking about
more expedient, I guess, But I mean, just to jump in here real quick, I mean, I agree. I agree with you, Bobby, as far as is that definition of automation when it comes to for productivity. But also, Don, you're right about people thinking of our industry that it's going to be in the futuristic movies like AI that's going to be just robots cleaning your house and stuff like that, and that sort of thing. I think that the human factor is always going to be involved in it. I mean, you just cannot rely I mean, just my opinion, but I just don't think that you could ever rely on a machine to actually, substitute what a human being is capable or what can be done.
So you don't want one of those restrooms that you go in one side and use it, and then it turns and it rotates around, and another side comes over while the other side's getting clean, huh?
Well, I like it, Dave, but I think I'd like to see it more in a movie.
I think one of the things that it's missing is the architectural aspects of our buildings. Our industry has never partnered, or well, not that big word. Bobby doesn't like those big broad words.
Yeah, don't use those words.
Don't use the nevers or always or
it's just not fair.
Real. I understand. It's just vernacular. So our industry as a whole, I don't think, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think as a whole our industry has not partnered properly, or the building industry has not partnered with us to create aspects of public buildings, just public buildings in general, that are fairly easy to clean. They make so many things that are so hard to clean because they're pretty. And if you look at it, you're talking about futuristic. Look at all the furistic movies. Everything is plain Jane. Walls are smooth.
White.
Everything is white.
It's white and stainless steel.
The interior designers didn't get
bland. Very easy to clean.
That's true.
That's the future world we're going to be in. Bland, plain, white, nothing.
Gentlemen, there's one other topic I want to talk about before we end our show today. And it also stems from a podcast that I did with a person that now has signed up to be on our podcast on a monthly basis. And she talks about marketing. Mickey Anderson talks about marketing. And one of the things that she talked about in our last podcast was that you need to know your customer base. And she talks to what she calls small or micro businesses, anywhere from 500,000 to 2 mil. And one of the things that she talked about is customer surveys. And, as I thought about listening to her and talking with her during the podcast, I'm thinking, I had to look at my personal side of it. I hear survey and I hit that click button.
I'm out.
so I'm thinking, okay, so she's telling me this is what we need to do. I'm throwing it out here. Do you guys like surveys? What do we do?
Hey, Dave, how many times have you lied on a survey? I lie on it all the time. Was the food great? Yeah, it was great. Was the service great? Yeah, it was great. You never get truth out of survey.
Well, there's Don's viewpoint.
Sorry.
Well, I think personally, for me, for us on the BSC side, and it's the same thing with you guys on your side, because of course you got to have good customer service or good surveys for you want to purchase from the shop. But I think one thing is really, really important is following up with people and making that a really big importance. I know, like, for example, all types of surveys, but like Google, people have a lot of respect nowadays for whatever the reasons are, but a lot of people have respect for Google, for how you rate somebody on Google or any other search engine, or how you rate somebody else on anything else. Even when you go to lead finding companies, like, let's say Home Advisor, formerly Home Advisor, now Angie's List, which they bought them, but they have a pro division for commercial contractors, and one of their attributes is that when you work with them, one of the most important things is to follow up with the client that's provided, as far as surveys and all that stuff. And they have these really cool systems where they can do it instantly. You just get an instant email a person does on their phone, and all they got to do is click one button, and that's it, and you got your ratings. So, I think all that stuff for us on this side is really important, because that's something that when you're dealing with the clients directly like that, especially when their buildings have been cleaned and all that sort of thing, we people want the feedback. I know that we're pretty big on feedback from people. We have monthly emails that go out for customer satisfaction, and we've been working on that actually since we started. So I think it's really important.
Javier, I like what you're saying there, because I think this is one of the things that Mickey was talking about. She said, getting the feedback is just the first step. It's what you do with that feedback that makes it valuable. And I think this is why most of us don't give the proper, I'm not going to use your word, Don, there, the proper input on the survey or the feedback form, is because nobody ever follows up with us. So why give them the truth? And I think that's what you're saying here. And as I'm thinking going forward, is this the missing link that most of us experience?
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's not good enough that you present a question or a survey to somebody. Hey, how did I do? Well, if they were busy or they didn't have time to fill out your survey, and then weeks go by, months go by, and then you just forget about it, you keep moving on to the next one, that doesn't do you any good. It's like not sending them anything at all. The purpose is that you have to, if they don't fill out that survey, or they don't go about it, you call them again, or you email them again, or you stay on top of it. You say, hey, I'm so-and-so, and we sent you an email. We're hoping that you're very satisfied with our work. Is there a reason why you didn't get back to us or whatever? We understand that you're busy. There's a process to go about it, but it's that follow-up, because if that follow-up is not in there, then you might as well not send anything to anybody. Just wing it,
As you say that, Javier, I know that your age and my age is a little different, so you might not have experienced this, but back in my day, I went in and bought a suit. The jacket, the trousers, the shirt, the tie, and I got a thank you card in the mail from the salesperson thanking me for that. Those days have gone. Now it's like, and so, whenever that person would actually ask me a question, I was much more engaging with that person in a truthful manner because they were treating me personal. I think this is what we're talking about. Bobby, do you have I see you leaning forward there a little.
Oh, that's just because my chair. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things on that. I think it's depending on who you're talking about, the text message has become the thank you note. So the text message to a customer is a very personal thing. It's not that email going out to all the customer base. And I know in some of the things that I've dealt with as a personal, as a customer, when you have that back and forth on a text with whoever you're dealing with, that can be like your thank you note, Dave, in theory. Then leads to a survey, and I'm a little more apt to fill out that survey if I know that person's personally asked me to do that survey about them, and give it an honest answers, comparative to a generic, here I'm going to send it out to our 50,000 customer survey. I found in our industry, it might be a little different than, again, from Javier's, is our salespeople have personal relationships with their customers.
Right.
So it's an ongoing personal relationship. The best person who gives me usually the best feedback is an engaged, self-aware salesperson, because they can tell you what went wrong with the deal. They know it. They can figure out if it was their part of it, if it was operational part, if it was just we didn't have a chance with that customer, whatever that might be. But again, self-aware, fully engaged, typically veteran type salesperson can really give great feedback to the operation and to the whole company. And we get a lot of that from our guys, particularly Don's one of them. And those are the things they take pretty seriously, because they know what's going on at their customer, and their customer is usually face to face and telling them the issue. And as long as they're bringing it to us without exaggeration, as long as they're bringing it to us in a business manner, it usually is very powerful.
Mm-hmm. Agree.
Did I leave you speechless, Dave, or what's going on?
I was actually waiting for Don to jump in, since you mentioned him by name, and he's that salesperson, and he is one of those.
Yeah, I knew you were. I'm playing your game, Dave. I'm sorry.
I know.
Yeah, I think generically I said surveys, because I get them all the time. You go out to eat somewhere and you get a survey 10 minutes later. How was dinner? How was this? And those things just drive me nuts. And there's other surveys I actually will fill out, because I think if I had good service or I had a good experience, I like to tell them that, and I give them a reason why. I don't just type in the Xbox. I just write a little note, say, hey, it was great service. But in general, generic surveys I think are worthless. That's my opinion. But like Bobby said, if it can be specific, if it's a specific survey, like Javier, even to his point, if you just did a job for somebody, a guy comes in and fixes your windows, or replaces a door, or cleans your house, whatever it is, something specific. How was our presence? How was our appearance? How did our folks put on it? Just something simple, and just little by little, you start asking those questions one at a time. Because in Javier's instance, he's back at that customer probably on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. Instead of asking them an overall survey of 10 questions, just ask them one simple question. How did my folks treat you today? Were you treated with respect? Blah, blah, blah. Something simple. I think you get very good feedback that way, because people will answer that and they'll answer that probably honestly.
Mm-hmm. I had the opportunity over the couple of weeks before Ian came through to be at 2 different school plant managers conferences. And one of them I had to travel to Missouri, and we actually rented a condo because it was a better price than a hotel room. However, I got a text from the owner that they had an air conditioner leak, and it had warped some of the floor, but it had been dried up. No problem. Okay, so I get there. We walk around, as most of us do when you get to someplace you've been traveling all day. You take your shoes off, you walk around.
Squish, squish, squish.
No, that's what we kind of expected. No, Dawn, no squishy. It was all dry. She was right. The problem is when I stepped into the shower, I had black footprints in the bottom of the shower. Oh, and I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. I've been in my socks all day. I've only been out of my socks for just a few feet. Well, gentlemen, being in the cleaning industry as we are, after I got through with the shower, I can guarantee you I put those socks back on, and I walked to the closet and found one of these nice fancy spin mops.
Oh yeah, those cedar ones or whatever.
Yeah, you got it. And it was obvious that this dirty water that had come up from underneath this laminate floor that was smeared across the dark floor. So, every time that you get through renting something, you get a review place. I don't send out the review like you said, Don, but I did do what Bobby said. I sent a review to the owner in a text message because that was personal to them. I didn't really believe that everybody needed to know, and it would have been too lengthy of a thing, but I let her know all the details from my professional viewpoint about that. Well, there was a few other issues that I let her know, but I didn't put it on Yelp or all of that kind of stuff to make a big, bad, ugly thing. It was something that happened. I think this is the kind of review that you were talking about here, ones that are more real, more personal, more to the point, and add more value to the whole process of actually helping the clients get the best from us.
But I would carry a backup bucketless mop with me just in case that happens to you again.
And some sanitizer.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, it's been great talking with you again today. This is our third of our episodes here, Talking Clean in a Dirty World. You can find us on YouTube. You can see that following right down on the bottom. We're at #Academy of Clean. Please like, subscribe, share. The reason we do this is so that you can share and everybody can. If you have a topic that you would like for us to discuss, something that you've heard, you've got a viewpoint. Maybe your viewpoint isn't quite the same as our viewpoint. As you can see, we can discuss just about anything. Gentlemen, I don't know what's on the topic for next month, but I'm sure that it will be different, and I'm sure we'll have a good discussion. Any parting words before we close for the day?
Be safe.
Yeah, stay safe.
See you, Dave.
Folks, please make sure that you go to academyofcleaning.com. There you can find everything about our classes that we have. You will also find our Rockstar program. We're in the last days of nominations for this year. Go to rockstarcustodian.com. We also have our cleaning festivals that are coming up for this next year. Make sure you go there. I think we're probably over 400 registrants right now. So we'll be in 4 different cities across Florida. We'll be televising some of that. We've got some great speakers, some vendors lined up, a lot of new things going on. So please check out all of that and make sure that you take and visit our sponsor's site. That's gemsupply.net. Thanks, guys. Till next time, make sure that you keep it healthy, positive, and proactive. Bye, folks.
See ya.
Bye-bye.